Hello, hello, hello. It is Wednesday. We are DebateSensei, and we are missing one today, are we not? Good, Matt.
Yeah, Jared is in some faraway place helping the children today. So let's all
Is that what he
applaud
told
Jared.
you? Okay, because I
Helping the
heard
children.
that Jared was looking for the perfect pair of slacks. Whatever that means. He's just really searching for the exact ones. But
They don't
so
exist.
Jared, but that's okay, because we have here Mr. Matt Shapiro Esquire, and I am Tim Seavey, your Assistant Director of Forensics at SDSU, and we are DebateSensei. And this week, we are talking about the presidential debates. More specifically, how the Republican National Convention said that they are not going to send any more candidates to the Commission on Presidential Debates-led debates unless their demands are met. So, interesting stuff.
Right.
I understand that you know a little bit of background on this subject, though.
Yeah, I did a little boning up on the old presidential debate history since we were doing this topic. We had it set since last week, which is kudos to us for pre-planning. This is
super on top of it.
For all debates and everything else in your life, do a little pre-planning. It'll help you out. But long story short, yeah, so a brief history. Hopefully I'll scatter it through and kind of bring up different topics as it goes along. But their presidential debates are not as old as you think. They're not hundreds of years old or something like that. From the earliest I've ever seen, first of all, you should know, in 1934, there was an act that basically says that every candidate who's running for president needs to get equal time on different channels on the television, as you can imagine, or radio in 1934. So there's probably not a lot of channels like there are today, and so it was probably a little more easy to manage. But it was also something that restricted, as we know it today, like a Democrat and a Republican debate, right? So imagine if you had to give every single party that you could think of equal time on that. That really mucked up the ability to have a debate as we know it. So there's kind of like some grounds for where it started. It started as early as 1934. They were banning it, or essentially banning it. And then in 1960, they kind of finagled their way through the rules, and we have our first set of debates with Nixon and Kennedy, which were actual presidential candidates. That was the first actual presidential candidate debate. But this was done through, much like as Tim just brought up today, okay, the Nixon camp and the Kennedy camp, there was no commission that kind of organized this stuff. They had to kind of make it happen themselves, which, the argument of today, which Tim just brought up, which is, coming to some terms that they can agree to go to this debate, that is the pinnacle focal point of where, today the issue is, and kind of explains the history of why there is a commission at all for the debates. But right. In 1960, they did, and they had the first set of debates, which notable that they're first. Also notable, Tim, which, as we talked about on our former presidential debate podcast, which we'll link here hopefully somewhere or something. But that was also the first remote presidential debate. I don't know if you knew that, Tim. Did you know that?
I knew that they were in the same studio.
Well, there was 3 debates between Kennedy and Nixon.
Okay.
The third one of them is in New York City, and one of them is in Hollywood, California. And they debate, though, and if you watch it on YouTube or something, it looks like they're in the same room. And they go as far as to make sure, like, the wallpaper is the same. Like everything is exactly the same, which is maybe a little extreme, maybe not, I don't know. But that's notable. And after that, there's a long pause where there is no debates, okay? And there's also no commission. What is it? I have a couple notes here. There's no debate from 60 to 75. And Johnson refused to debate, and Nixon refused to debate, and for these, and so, but people, I'm sure, I don't know this, I wasn't there, but you can imagine people after seeing those first debates wanted them. And Tim, I mean, maybe right now let's try to jump. I don't want to just steal the whole, thing here.
Well, you got the expertise in the background on it, but I mean, it begs the question, though, of why do we have a commission on presidential debates? Like, why do we have?
Let's hold on, if you don't mind. Let's take it more. We will get there by 1987, I promise. But what I was going to say is, what do you think? What do you think people saw or got out of the first set of Nixon-Kennedy debates, which kind of starts setting up? Let's just start a proposed resolution saying, the presidential debates are good or something like that. What on the AF, is good about having a presidential debate? We can just start this. We'll hopefully trickle this through. But
I think we've talked about it a bunch of different times, but that particular debate was a seminal turning point for really like political advertising and like what it meant to be a president on TV, because that was, as I understood, there were debates before that, and I may be wrong on this, but all of the debates prior to that had always been done over the radio. And that's where Nixon was very eloquent and people thought that he always did well. Because, I mean, like, you've got presidents or presidential candidates have debated in the past, but maybe it wasn't in the same, like, it is election season, here are the issues, let's make this a public, a really big public event necessarily. So those were maybe the first, that was definitely the first televised. Yeah. And
like maybe Nixon and Kennedy debated in college before there were ever presidential debates or something. Yeah. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
But they, so it was simultaneously cast on the radio as well as TV broadcasts.
Right. That's where I think I don't know if you're confused. I could be wrong. I read some stuff about how the myth was, there's a myth, it could be true, myths are true, myths are false, but there was something that was said that, Nixon won, whatever winning, by the way, means in debate, I don't know, but it says basically that Kennedy won on the televised version, and Nixon won one of them on the radio, which... Right,
and it was the same debate, in the same debate, those that watched it said that Kennedy won because he was so much more put together. He was, young and good looking and like eloquent, and had the appearance and presentation of a really effective debate, versus on the radio when that element, all the visuals totally cut out. Nixon was like sweating profusely because the lights were so hot. And like, he
didn't take his nitroglycerin shot wherever they take.
So that's, where, as the legend goes, that's where that split happened, and where Kennedy kind of created this mold from that point on of, presidents need to be very charismatic, but they need to look like they are, presenting in a presidential way. So that it became like the presidential look became, so much more important and helped all the way into today. But where this commission, so you said the commission comes up in
87. Yeah. So in 1975, this is a year before an election year, I'm pretty sure, the American people, through the voice of their delegates and electoral, their representatives, they amend the Federal Communications Act or something like that, the Communication Commission, and they bend the equal time rule, which allows a more feasible way for two major parties, which is better than one major party, but it allows for a more constitutional way for people to have these debates without worrying about the equal time thing for every single party. So that's where a little bit of a shift happens, and we start getting debates. Interesting enough, though. Well, if you want to jump ahead, I mean, I wanted to.
We now have a commission, right? So
in 87, there's a commission, and so let's talk about the commission. Well, what is a commission? From what I've read, from what I understand, the commission was started by sets of Republicans and Democrats, which you should know. It's funny because the Presidential Commission for Debate, or Presidential Debate Commission, is very much front forward saying that they're nonpartisan, which is important.
That's supposed to be like baked into their
right. Like they have a list of people who are on the committee, and they say they're former senators, and they say they're this and that, and they don't say what they used to be, or they don't say their party, which I thought was funny on their website, because it's like they're very much like, oh, we're not, this is just a big blank slate, and we're just blank people. But there's the commission starts, and they seek to address a problem. I wrote down kind of what they say. They say prior to the formation of the Presidential Commission of Presidential Debates were hastily arranged after negotiations between the candidates that left many uncertain if there would be a debate at all. So that brings this really ties into what you mentioned at the very beginning, Tim. Where go ahead.
Yeah, but we got to say like what it is that the RNC says is the problem, right? Because they have just said that the Commission for Presidential Debates is messing it up, and they're skewed, they are biased, and it is unfair. So they're not going to send anyone unless some demands are met.
Yeah.
So those demands are seemingly calling out the debate commission for not doing what they're supposed to do in being nonpartisan
or some right.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I don't know how any organization can truly be nonpartisan though. Like we picked all of our members out of a vacuum. They've never voted for a candidate. They've always kept it completely silent. Like it's difficult to find a completely nonpartisan human being, let alone like, super respectful officer. That's already tricky.
Yeah, I feel like, this is touching on also kind of one of my pros or arguments for why the debates are good in general, but I'm going to use it also in the respect of what you just said of how could someone be nonpartisan? And we live in a world today where it's so polarized. It's so, it feels like what you just said. How could someone not be nonpartisan? One thing I like about the debates, and one AF argument I would run on, pro presidential debate is, I guess to be a cynic, whether it be true or not true, it forces candidates to kind of express humanity. I mean, I think now that's up for interpretation. I just feel like, in my opinion, someone who comes off very cold or nervous or appears to be lying or appears to be apathetic to regular people, despite whatever their policy is, just the tenor and the nonverbals and the part of them that, is a human being trying to persuade other human beings, before you ever get to a policy, like, you only really get to see that in an unscripted, or as unscripted as we can get it, in a live presidential debate, right? Because any sort of speech or any sort of public publicity stunt, whatever they call it, it's very much orchestrated. But theoretically, a debate would kind of not only put a candidate in a live TV setting, but it puts them in a live TV setting with arguably the most polarizing figure they could be next to, and you really get to see how they are. You know what I mean? The emotions would run high in that situation, and you get to see how a person deals with their emotions and how they treat other people, stuff like that.
So, are you saying like that is an important trait for a president, like to be able to engage in a contentious position?
I think it's important.
And still come out?
I think it's important that the people are able to see those things or experience those things. And as we've seen, what's scary, which is maybe a neg argument, is you can pander to a certain group of people that maybe I don't agree with, and maybe it offends me what this person's saying, but because now they have this venue to broadcast it, we're in the marketplace of ideas, and if enough people think that a certain sort of behavior or policy or conduct is okay, that gives them that venue. So on the neg, there's ground here on both sides. It's not like saying when I say expressing your humanity and how you react to the people, it hopefully is in a way that we all universally, objectively find in a positive way. But unfortunately, that's definitely true. We are all subjective human beings, and what one person likes and what 300 million people like is way different than what's morally or objectively like a good thing or something like that. I don't know.
So with these debates, though, first off, we're just questioning the premise of, should we have a commission? Sure, if these debates are going to happen, there should be somebody that sets the rules for it. That's not either party bickering back and forth.
Yeah.
Theoretically, it should be a third party that sets these rules. So it's more that how that committee sets the rules that the RNC has issue with. So they're saying, for example, some of their grievances that they're airing are that the rules have changed without the candidate's consent or like right up to the deadline. They've switched formats or questions or types, so they've changed rules and things.
Yeah.
And so the thing that can't be okay. It seems like a fairly fair policy. It's like in any debate, we talk about procedural arguments, and that is you have to have the rules fair on the debate and both sides agree to them. Otherwise, it's like, what's the point of having the debate? But then they're also saying that the moderator selection, this is where it becomes certainly more contentious. That moderator selection is the most egregious process, and they end up appointing moderators to these debates that have expressly condemned one candidate, particularly the Republican candidate, and also openly supported another side or been openly Democratic in the past. And that is, skewing and therefore antithetical to their nonpartisan background. So that's what they're saying is their issue. And that seems to be the most, clear point.
And me and Tim, at least definitely not me, we're not speaking truth to anything right now. We're just kind of putting this on the table. Yeah, like what I mean is there may be truth to that, and some concerns. The reason why they're not doing this is because as they had problems with, as they mentioned before, right on the Commission for Presidential Debate website, they say, but before there was a commission, parties couldn't agree to terms. So that the whole time, the people, if they set a date, we're going to have a debate in 2 weeks. The whole time, there's probably news coming out like, there's not going to be a debate. They can't agree on this. They can't agree on that. So the commission, the AF side, if the resolution was about the commission itself, or if you want to make it about the commission, is kind of like the commission is this institution that kind of makes sure there's a debate. Like people deserve the debate, and I think I even kind of brought it into this podcast today in a very cynical way, and I told you about how the Republicans and Democrats put it together. So if anything, the partisanship, which is bad, is against the other parties. That's kind of the original downside. But now we're kind of saying within now since '87, if it's swayed to the right or to the left, the other side doesn't want to join because they feel like the actual institution is swayed one way. That's kind of a different argument, right?
And that's explicitly what the RNC is saying.
I understand.
It is swung left, therefore we're not going to play that game.
Maybe they just want like a dozen roses and a charcuterie board in the green room, and they're like, no, we're not paying for the charcuterie board. They're like, all right, fine, we're not going to the debate.
So and they're like they lay it out, and they recognize that they obviously have a huge amount of clout with it, because if they don't show up, no debate will happen at all, really. So they'll still televise the primary debates and things like that. But if there's no Republican candidate, so as of now, what they've said is that because the Rules Commission has it already apparently set in stone for 2024, they're not going to participate unless they go back and reopen the books and start changing those rules before 2024, which seems surprising to me that it takes 2 years to change rules and stuff like that. It seems like you could edit it, especially when the organization's sold.
You mean in the next couple of months or something?
It's not like they've got day in and day out 24 hours of work to do. It's an organization that's
what does the commission do for the 4 years between the debates, right?
Yeah. So it sounds to me like the issue of, hey, we've got some grievances, let's air these out, and we should do it soon, that I don't think many people would have too much issue with. But if they're saying we're not going to participate in these debates, and assuming that the debate commission doesn't change anything, now we just don't have a Republican participant in these debates, which probably means
they can go debate themselves.
But you won't have
a true sign of a master debater, by the way. What I was going to say is, no-shows, notable no-shows from history. The only, from what I could tell, aside from the refusals I mentioned earlier of Nixon and Johnson, which those kind of are pre-commission. So post-commission, the first person and only person I could tell so far who ever refused to go to a presidential debate for reasons of substance, was Jimmy Carter. And I guess the scenario was in 1980, Reagan was invited to a debate, Carter was invited to debate, and a third-party candidate was invited to a debate. And because there was a third-party candidate, Carter wouldn't go. And
I take issue.
There was no debate until the week before the election, when Carter agreed to do a debate against Nixon alone, and it was the highest, the biggest ratings for a presidential debate, percentage-wise per population ever. But it was the biggest viewers until 2020 or 2016, which I have a note in here somewhere. But the key is there was 80.6 million tuned in. The U.S. population in 1980 was 227 million, which is about 35% of the overall population who, well, theoretically, maybe not counting international, but theoretically, 35% of the U.S. population watched the debate. Not
So
until
is the answer, don't have the debates, and then
Yeah,
just last
keep them in
second actually vote.
suspense and then have one at the end. Right. No, that's
So funny enough,
key.
that's one of the issues actually that the RNC also brought forward,
Yeah.
especially after this year of craziness with mail-in ballots, is they said that some of these debates are happening after mail-in has already started. So people have cast their ballot and then start watching a debate, and like, that's messed up. It should happen before any ballots are cast, like before even early voting starts. That way, there's a capability for people to see both sides.
Right.
I can also kind of get on board with that. Like, that seems to make sense. Like, I know that early voting has gotten earlier and earlier, but still, like, fine. If people are in tune enough to be able to cast a ballot, they should be able to hear from the candidates in the form. And again, this is kind of painting it with a rosy brush, but in the forum where both candidates have to extemporaneously respond to things. So the current format is that they're not given the questions in detail, at least as I understand, or if it's like a town hall, it's people that are asking them the questions. They've got to come up with the answers. But even if they do receive these questions in advance, it's still extemporaneous, the responses back and forth. So in rebuttal to what the other person says, of course they'll be really prepared for these things. They'll have an idea, but at least, as you said, it forces some humanity where it's like
one way or the other, whatever that humanity may be, right?
They don't get 50 takes at it. They're doing it live, and it's not just a rally of their people to where, like, if they mess something up, like, they're still on their side. It's they actually have to contend with arguments on either side, theoretically, with both sides listening. So I think in general, that idea is good. I think, unfortunately, it has become such a hot mess that I would probably prefer, like, if I were, making a decision on the side, I would probably say, like, no, it's not worth it unless, like, there were major rule changes to it. So, like, the way that the debates currently
charcuterie boards for everybody. That's what I'm saying.
Every single person, like, all the way around. Otherwise, I'm not watching. What, I'm going to watch it without some burrata, a little bit of camembert,
a little brie,
slice of prosciutto. So honestly, it makes it all go down. I just think they've become pretty garbage, and I know we've talked about that in numerous episodes previous to this, but because the just soundbite world that we live in is so dominant, the slices of a debate are like 5-10 second little clips. It's not the larger message that is being conveyed. So you can't change that. You can't, like, make rules that the media is not allowed to take selections from a debate or something like that. But if you look at 2016, where I know you've got some stats, when you had Trump versus Hillary, I think that was, like, the most just abomination of a debate. Like, nothing happened. Nothing was accomplished except, the ethos of it was very apparent. So no issues were really solved. They didn't get to questions. It was more, how do you feel coming away from it? How do you feel about the candidates? And I think that was an incredible, like, research into PR, like, from a PR perspective, like, wow, amazing how that made changes and how that, swayed people's opinions of the candidates. But not for the better necessarily, I would say.
I have two quick points. So first, as far as the one, I don't have which debate. There was, I think, 3 of them between Hillary and Trump. But one of the Hillary-Trump debates, maybe the first, was the actual highest rated. 84 million people watched, but it was only at that time there's 330 million Americans. So the ratio is what kind of intrigued me, where, like, it was 25% of the population watched that one, which is a lot, the most ever by actual number. But the the Carter Reagan debate was percentage-wise, like, blows it out of the water. Anyways, second point is negs to the presidential debates, whether you want to call them as they are or at all. Under the commission, or even if people agreed to certain things and went. One of the neg arguments for why it's not good is what you were saying, Tim. I think in another way, when you are using scripts and canned messages, and even in our own world, like, if you found out that a presidential candidate was a debater their whole life, okay, and they're trained to, like, persuade you, okay, there's an element of that which is bad. It's not good. You don't want, and I think the trick is, it's the difference between I believe, in honest to goodness, like, sincerity can resonate, right? Like it's not bad being trained and explaining things that are you're passionate about, which help people out. Like that only makes it stronger, okay? But where people are cynics and people are worried, and the sophists in the ancient Greece, where they just use their powers of persuasion to do whatever anyone winds them up and tells them to do. That's bad, right? So we don't want that. And the more watered down softball, just get in there and do a Belichick speech. We're going to do our job and we're going to get out, and that's not actually helping anything, right? So I think you were hitting on that. I have that as one of my negs, either under the commission specifically. You could say it's uniquely worse, but you could also say that the nature of a presidential debate is, you just said it. You're kind of, appealing to everyone as best you can, which is diluted. Now, I mean, with Donald,
it should be though, right? Like the president is not just the president for their own party. Like the president is supposed to be the president.
Well, the idea also would be that people's
should appeal to both sides, and I think that's where
the
tactics maybe have diverted from that, where it seems like it's no longer the intention of the candidates to persuade the other side. It is just like a
preaching to the choir, right?
Like,
yeah, no,
how can I get more YouTube views by so and so slam so and so? Like I think that style of combat debate unfortunately gets a lot of clicks and a lot of views and a lot of headlines, and candidates use that to their advantage now, which I really think ends up pulling very, very far away from what hopefully informed voters would want to hear, and that is like the policy differences and the engagement with the policy differences.
Right.
And should be.
I literally, like, the part of me, I'm going to bring up a book again. All right. I try not to be, there's a book called How Democracies Die. Okay. And it's like all about like democratic. When I say democratic, I don't mean like the party. I mean like the system, democratic norms. And, one of the things that Americans have done as best they can, despite the Civil War and some other stuff, they've tried to treat each other respectfully as far as political parties go, okay? And for, 200-300 years now, there's been this essence where, like, you have some ideas and I have some ideas that are different, but we are able to go to our Congress and discuss them. We are able to talk about them. I have friends who are on both sides, and, the essence of our humanity is not our political party, okay? And, the world we live in today tells you the exact opposite, right? Like you were mentioning earlier, like, how could someone not be partisan? It's like the thought, that notion that, like, I'm supposed to respect anyone despite red or blue or just putting a label on them is almost like lunacy at this point. And that is what scares me. I think presidential debates, even the willingness to go to them, is evidence of that respect and that desire to, engage with the other side. Because you're right. I mean, preaching to the choir, right? It's not just screaming to your side at a rally, or that on either side. It's not engaging. I mean, it's not engaging to someone who wants to, maybe learn about the other person. Like, if there's no desire to learn about the other side, that's bad.
Yeah.
Like, I would say that's bad. And so I think the presidential debate kind of encourages that, which is good. And temperament, intelligence, kindness, demeanor. These people. The president is the representative. Like, once whoever's elected is the president, and they are the person that the outside world and their leaders deal with. And so those things are important. I mean, and however you want that person to be, like, there's your chance to kind of see it. I want to make one quick note at the very, very beginning of all this. The first evidence or kind of presidential debate was in 1956 between two women who advocated for the candidate of their side, which is kind of a cool thing. At this point in time, former First Lady Eleanor Roosevelt advocated for the Republican incumbent Dwight D. Eisenhower, and a woman by the name of Margaret Chase Smith, who's famous, women's suffrage person and person who was elected senator in prior to 1956. She represented the other side. This guy named I think it's Adlai Stevenson. he was a Democratic candidate, former governor, and like it's just kind of cool that the first technical presidential debate where people debated and argued for their candidates were two women in 1956, and that's kind of a cool fact. So
I think Lincoln and Douglas would maybe disagree with that, but we can maybe address that on a different one.
Frederick Douglass was a presidential candidate? That's bad.
No, not Frederick Douglass. It was different Douglas, but he was arguing against Lincoln. But then again, I don't know that was necessarily election season. So we'll have to do a little bit of homework on that. But at least we got some cool historical facts, some ideas around what the RNC is debating and whether or not like presidential debates should happen at all. So we will see where those go, and I'm sure we'll have a follow-up to this when those come sooner. So
I hope there's some presidential debates. I hope they have them.
I hope they have them listening. Because if nothing else, I think I'm with you on just the optimism of like having them is better than not having them.
What else are you gonna do? You know, it's like Tuesday night. You know.
Well, you, of course, just wait around.
Watch Seinfeld.
Is back on Wednesday.
Yeah.
We are Matt Shapiro, Esquire. I am Tim CV. We are Debate Sensei. Have a terrific night.